So in addition to faults, we can have folds. So, got a new stack of sedimentary rock layers, oldest on the bottom, youngest on the top. Red is down the oldest, blue is the youngest. So if we leave the lithosphere and go deeper into the asthenosphere or very close to it, instead of fracturing, the materials will instead flow. So they'll behave in a ductile manner. And if this undergoes compression, so squeezed from the sides, what one possible thing that could happen is we could see some folding where it bends and the one side goes down and the other side goes down as well. So let's see if I can get this to fold. Now, try to get it a little tighter here. So this we refer to as an anticline. Anticlines are shaped kind of like an A. That's how I've always remembered them. And the oldest rocks are in the center of an anticline, and the limbs, the outside of the limbs, have the youngest rock. So we're always going to see that oldest to youngest shape. And generally we refer to that the limbs are tilted away from the center. So this is the hinge. It's the part, it's kind of like a door hinge. It's where the fold has bent. So this part is neither bent to the left, down to the left or the right. It is back, was where it was originally. But everything to the one side is bent down and the other side as well. So that is an anticline. Now, just like if we can have them bent down, we can also have them go the other way. So I'm still holding this in the same orientation. Red is the oldest, blue is the youngest. And instead of folding the limbs down, this time can fold the limbs up. And so we end up more like a U shape. So this time, in a syncline, the youngest rocks are in the center of the fold and the oldest rocks are on the outside of the fold. We can compare that to the anticline. You can see that the order of the layers is exactly the opposite. And in this one, the syncline, the layers are actually tilted towards the hinge. The hinge is now inside the fold, and each side is tilted inwards. For the syncline, and tilted out or away from the hinge for the anticline. Now, we usually see anticlines and synclines sort of connected together. So rarely do we see them separate. Or you think about like if you took a rug and you scrunched the rug, or folded something even as simple as a piece of paper, you would expect to see multiple folds together, going up and down. So that's what we typically see in rocks, but we're going to look at them separately. Now, if these are, we rarely see them actually nice like this. We usually only see part of the fold. And so what we're going to look at now is I'm going to imagine that they've been eroded. So I'm going to take this anticline and I'm going to erode the top off. And I'm going to do that simply by cutting it like so. Now, there's the anticline. And when I erode the top off, and now I can see the inside. Now notice that there are stripes. And again, the red was the oldest, the blue is the youngest. So we've got the youngest rocks in the center, the oldest rocks in the center of the fold, and the youngest rocks on the outside. Now let's do the same thing to our syncline. Lay this one down here. And I'm going to erode it just like the other one. Put that away. Whoops, I went the wrong way. Put that back. Sometimes I do that. Trying to talk and do at the same time does not work so well. So cut it a little bit higher up here because I want to take the top off, not the bottom off. So no, this was the syncline originally, and now erode that, and we can look inside the fold, and there we see the patterns. Youngest rock in the center, oldest rock on the outside. It's the exact opposite pattern that we see for the anticline. And that's actually a way that we can identify them. If we see these repetitive stripes, we think that there's a good probability that we've got a fold there, and all we need to know is the age progression. And if we have old to young to old, we have a syncline. If we have young to old to young, we have an anticline. And that's how we're able to tell the difference by age. We also can tell the difference by the tilting of the layers. So oftentimes these things are very, very large. These are mountain-sized things. And if we look at the way the rocks are tilted, we look at the strike and dip, what we'll see is that all in the syncline, all of the layers are tilted towards the hinge, and in the anticline, they're all tilted away. So if we looked at the strike and dip symbols on the map, we would see that they are all going towards the hinge on each layer. Now, of course, once we cross the hinge line, they tilt the other direction. So we would see the strike and dip like so. Now, if you don't remember what strike and dip is, or you had trouble with it in the book, be sure to look at my video on strike and dip. So that's the syncline. Now, if we look at the anticline, remember the anticline, the layers are tilting away from the hinge on both sides. So in this case, we would put the strike and dip symbol going the exact opposite. Strike and dip, strike and dip. Notice in a flat lying fold, one that the fold isn't tilted itself, across the hinge line we go the other way. Strike, dip, strike, dip, one more, strike and dip. So the strikes all going this way, or the strikes are all parallel to the contacts between the different rock layers. If it was a tilted fold, we would see it differently. We would see perhaps a U or a bend on the surface as well. The layers on the top would be bent. But in flat lying, they are parallel. And the strike is parallel to the contacts, is parallel to the hinge line. And that's how we know, we can identify synclines and anticlines by looking at them in cross-section. If we're lucky enough at a road cut, for example, we can use age progression, old to young to old, young to old to young. We can also use strike and dip if we've got that data either in a map or we actually went out and did it ourselves. Then we would be able to put it on a map and look at it from a much greater distance and be able to tell whether we've got anticlines or synclines. So those are folds, flat lying folds.